Hey everyone, I want to thank you for joining us again on another episode of the podcast we still don't have a name for, but ultimately my goal is to try and put my friend group together and try and help answer young entrepreneurs with all the questions that I'm getting. I know that I have a lot of friends that are currently in the middle of building a startup or operating a startup, and after my stint at TechCrunch, I've started to get a lot of questions on how I do things, and I just felt like there'd be no better solution than putting the people that I ask the questions to in the room with me so they could answer themselves. So today I've got my friend Brett Wade. He's the CEO and founder of Wade-O-Lution. Did I say that right?
You're all good.
Yep. Wade-O-Lution. He's also my neighbor. So we've got to back and forth a lot on a lot of ideas. Wade, welcome to the pod. How are you?
Doing well, man. Appreciate you having me. I
appreciate you spending all morning while we set up all the new equipment. So thanks for being patient.
Hopefully it makes us look pretty.
I think it is. Brett, why don't you start out telling me a little bit about your background? I know that you come from football, you went to tech. Give our viewers a little insight where you come from.
So actually, Texas A&M Aggie, class of 2016. I've done it all. I came out of school, was money hungry, and kind of just chased my dreams. I've been a train conductor for BNSF. I've worked in oil and gas in West Texas and places you don't want to go to, of Mentone, Texas. I grew up drag racing with my family, so I was a lube technician and worked on cars at GMC for a little while. After all of that, I built a financial advising practice at Northwestern Mutual. I spent about 4 years building that practice and inheriting clients and building a clientele. And during COVID, it slowed down just a little bit, and that's kind of when I took some time to myself, prayed a bunch, and tried to ask, what could I do to leave a lasting legacy? And that's kind of where the idea for Wade-O-Lution stemmed from. We didn't start it until the beginning of 2022, but that's kind of how we got here.
Wade-O-Lution started off as one thing, and it's pivoted for you dramatically in real time. So I've got to be a witness to that. Why don't you start off? I think a lot of times we talk about networking and the importance of it. We met randomly. There was a storm that blew through my yard. You saw that there was a boat in my yard, and you took the first opportunity to come introduce yourself when my trampoline blew into the backfield. One of the things that I think is important is building a network. Why don't you touch on how important it's been to you on your journey building and networking so far?
For sure. I mean, kind of touching point of coming to meet you. I had heard through the grapevine that you were starting something really cool and hadn't got the opportunity to meet you yet. And so the minute I saw a trampoline go flying, I somehow had your phone number prior to that, but hadn't reached out yet, and took the opportunity to let you know, hey, let's go jump over this barbed wire fence together and get to know each other a little bit by dragging this trampoline back. But network's been super important. For me, it's always a bigger plan than mine. You work really hard, and they say you get really lucky when you work hard. So the people that I've been able to attract to my team has come from hard work, but I think the luck that brought us together was from previous hard work. But speaking to networking specifically, my businesses before this were built on networking. So that's kind of where I've prided myself on being a really, really good networker and putting myself in front of people that it's a mutual relationship. It's not one-sided. And I think a lot of people have to remember that is like, if you're networking for the sole good of yourself, you're not really networking. You have to be finding people that, it's going to help both parties by creating that relationship.
One of the things, when it's Christmas season, we're all going to Christmas parties and doing the Christmas thing. But to my wife, I was explaining to her, like, hey, being in the room and being seen in these rooms is just about as valuable as meeting the people in the rooms those first times. Being an Aggie, you've got to go back and meet with other Aggies to try and brainstorm and talk about ideas. And I think that's the thing that universities, and I'm not going to sit here and promote university, but I think one of the things that universities do really well is build a bridge and an opportunity for you to continue to expand and grow your network. And I think that you're living through that with Wade-O-Lutions right now.
100%. So back to the high school days, I had probably 18 to 19 Division I college offers for the football. And A&M was always at the top of my list simply because I knew the ring that they put on your finger. Some call it a cult, some people don't, but it was a brotherhood that lasts a lifetime. And it's come to fruition most definitely in Wade-O-Lution of all of my advisory team by chance is now Aggies. Very, very high intelligence and high networking Aggies. And so I didn't go out of my way to make it that way, but it kind of, again, the harder you work fell into my lap, the luck side of it. But yeah, I mean, A&M in general, the universities, I went to that school, luckily and blessed on a scholarship, but I went to that school knowing that I was going to need that network at some point in my life.
And it's continued to help you along the way. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Wade-O-Lutions, what it was supposed to be, and then we'll talk through what it's become today.
Sure. So we'll tell the story all the way back to 2013. I met a girl at Texas A&M, wanted to introduce her to my family, so we brought her to Arlington, Texas. Didn't live in a bad neighborhood or anything, but it was time to finally introduce her to the family. Take her into the house, introduce her to my father and my stepmother. Come back out 30 minutes later to go to dinner, and her brand new Mustang was sitting on cinder blocks in my driveway, and it's sunny outside. So fast forward from 2013 to 2020, when I was praying, how to leave a lasting legacy for whatever reason that day, God bestowed on me to solve the issue of wheels being stolen. I come from a mechanical background, again, drag racing and everything else. And so I just picked up a pen and paper and started writing a thesis. And when I looked down 4 pages later, we had solved the issue of how to prevent anti-theft or theft on wheels. So that's what the product was originally intended to do. We built an entire engineering team around that in 2022, launched that product at SEMA, so the largest automotive trade show in November of 2022, and had some questions come to us in that trade show. And those questions were, can specific companies utilize this product to become a safety fastener rather than an anti-theft fastener? And it really kind of opened our brain up to realizing what we truly created was more than just an anti-theft lug nut. It was the first digital fastener to hit the market. So now we've kind of moved from automotive industry into industrial, manufacturing, energy. If you can think of a critical area that a fastener needs to be placed on to either save somebody's life or prevent a machine from going down and creating uptime and revenue in your company, that's kind of what our new product is designed to do. Now, great help has been provided to me to kind of jump into those other industries, but I say I'm blessed with a brainchild that happened to be a lug nut that turned into something greater.
Yeah, and I think that's. I always try and put myself in a position not expecting anything and then just allowing whatever that opportunity presents to take place. And I think that, that's an interesting thing. You went to SEMA 100% committed to the automotive space and 100%. Left out with a totally different perspective of what your business is. And now you're dealing with some of the biggest companies in the world in those industries as a safety product to prevent downtime within those organizations. But without going to SEMA, you would have going to SEMA with an open mind.
Yeah,
you would have never had the opportunity to what the product is today and the willingness to pivot. Right. So, building a company, how often do you find yourself thinking and looking to make sure that you found product market fit? Now that you've pivoted once, what's the idea of pivoting in the future? Is it something that's still intimidating? Are you still convinced that you found your product market fit? Tell us a little bit about that.
So I 100% think we found our product fit. As far as a pivot in the future, I think it becomes less of a pivot and more of an addition of adding other industries that we want to accomplish in the future. But to our investors and to our team, we've really focused and honed in on, market acceptance. And I think we saw that a little bit more in these other industries, energy and manufacturing, than we did in automotive. I didn't want to fight an uphill battle. Like, I thought the product was great. I knew that it would work, and we had proved it out that it would work, and we were ready to launch it. But market acceptance and also just the understanding of we wanted to become a business-to-business transacting, business rather than a B2C business to consumer. And so that kind of keeps us on the straight and narrow path of focusing on the industries that we're in. And in the future, our goal is to just allow our revenue to allow us to go into some of the other industries that may interest us or spark their interest to bring us in.
What you mentioned investors, that's one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about is, how to tell the story to our investors. We both kind of I started my company a year earlier than you. And you can tell that in our conversations when we're talking about where we're at. but in raising money is something that's intimidating no matter where you come from.
Yep.
When you first thought about raising money, what was the immediate thought process around raising money, which direction you wanted to go, and then how'd you break that down to make the decisions in the directions that you went?
Well, being completely truthful, kind of looking back to our relationship, I raised money for Ed Soma before I raised money for Wade-O-Lution. And being 100% honest, it's a lot easier for me to raise money for you than it is for myself. It's a lot less scary to be told, no, I don't want to invest in that company, and it's not your brainchild, it's not your baby. If somebody says, hey, I don't want to invest in Kyle or Ed Soma, I'm like, okay, I'm sorry that you don't believe in him in the same way I do, but okay. Versus, when you're pounding the pavement for yourself, when they tell you no, it's personal, right? So kind of fighting that uphill battle first. But I think the biggest thing is just understanding that it doesn't matter who you're in front of. I truly believe in my heart that people invest in people.
Mm-hmm.
They don't invest in a great idea, or can you as a person take that idea to where they think you should take that idea? And so the meetings that I've been in lately, in meeting with my former investors and kind of asking them, why did you invest in me? It was, I invested in you as a person rather than who Wade-O-Lution or what y'all were doing.
Right.
Because they believed that I, as a person, was going to take Wade-O-Lution to what I had hoped Wade-O-Lution would be. So
the reason I've been guiding this the way that I have is because I think a lot of people come into the idea of building a business or, starting something up, knowing that they're going to need to raise money, and they automatically think that they need to go to venture capital first. And from what I've learned, and I'm not saying I'm professional because I'm learning every day, and that's why I'm having these conversations, but I preparing yourself to raise venture money is 100% different than raising money from angel investors.
Yep.
And finding somebody to believe in you. So, but the only way that you're going to get those angels, unless you're born into money, is having conversations.
Correct. Yep.
And putting yourself in different rooms. We've raised just over $3 million. I think you've raised $1 million, $1.25 million.
Yep.
But all through angel networks this far, right?
Yep. So ours has been kind of 5 main investors in 2022. We raised $1.25 million for 2023. That's 2022, 2023 combined. For 2024, we're starting our Series A, and the seed round of the series is $2 million on a $10 million raise total.
So the way that you've got that structured in your mind is that you're raising a total of 10 million. You're going to scale that out over how many months?
The 10 million would probably be another 24 months.
Another 24 months. But in order to get into that, you want to make sure that you really put the first 2 million of that raise on the forefront. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right.
So, in doing that, you found product market fit. You have your product in one of the biggest manufacturing companies in the world. They're doing validation testing. They love the product. Next, you're going to build out the software side of your solution. What are some of the challenges or some of the questions that you're facing going from hardware now into software?
So I think the biggest thing that people are asking us is, what is the commercialization strategy? And then on top of that, what do we think this mystery huge manufacturing company's purchase order is going to look like? And you probably heard me in my team meeting earlier this morning. And there's no way to predict what that PO is going to look like. I had a meeting yesterday with a group that I kind of want to highlight, and they sold their product to a company about 6 years ago for $600 to $700 million was the number, and made their exit. But the one thing that I asked them in yesterday's meeting was, did you bring the market, or did you bring the product to market or did you sell the product to market that you thought you were originally bringing to market? So like at the end, when you sold, was it the product that you started off with?
Right.
I've marked that kind of down that path. And he said they did bring and sell the product that they originally intended to. It just took a lot more work than what they originally thought. He said it took 6 extra years, and they had originally invested $5 million, and it took 20 to get it to where it was to then be able to sell.
So you've got your product being tested in a very reputable manufacturing facility. Now you're looking at building out your software. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing going from hardware into software now?
It's almost like a completely separate company in its own, right? So, You have to kind of capital raise separately for that. I'm not a software guy, so I have to go outsource and find talent to build that platform, which I've relied very heavily on you from. But really just kind of familiarizing myself with, I'm a hands-on guy. I build race cars. I drive race cars. I've driven trains. I want to fly planes. I want to do all of that. And then trying to kind of scale myself back to understanding the ones and zeros that create that user experience, user interface for our end user to kind of digest what that hardware is creating.
Right. So, and this was something that I was asking myself this morning, because part of my journey, and I started with software, right? And I come from a very non-technical position, just like yourself. So the software conversations were, overwhelming, to say the least. But looking back 3 years into it, I wish that I would have done things differently. And we had the conversation earlier on like building out the plan behind the software and the schematic behind it and how it's supposed to grow. One of the things that I wish that I would have done differently, looking back, is that I don't necessarily feel like I wanted to have a co-founder, but somebody that was very organized from a program side of things. And sure. I think that, being a non-technical founder shouldn't stop you from building an idea or putting something in the market, because a lot of very creative people come in with solutions and then it's just a matter of continually building solutions. But I think, for an advice or from a standpoint, is just build it as organized as humanly possible. And then also have somebody from an advisor standpoint to be able to overlook it. But one of the things that I've learned personally in my journey over the last couple months is being very clear with what those advisors are supposed to do. I have some of the most talented people in the world, but, looking back, I'm like, well, why didn't you look at this? And they're like, well, you never asked me to. Right. So I think, when you're dealing with very technical, very smart, sophisticated people, it's just asking the questions the way you need it to be explained to you. And asking those hard questions is probably the key to any success in going into the areas where you're not so familiar. And you brought up race cars. Is there any way that you can compare the challenges that you've had in your racing career to the challenges that you are building this company?
So shout out Michael Peed. We had this conversation yesterday morning of racing in general is problem solving. The better racer you are, the better problem solver that you are. And so they go hand in hand of, every day that you go into the garage to work on that race car, there's a problem that has occurred that didn't exist yesterday. And that's kind of like opening your eyes in the morning and waking up for your business. Something's happened today that didn't occur yesterday. And so you're always trying to strategically overcome new challenges. So that would be kind of my biggest connection between the two, and why I believe I'm a good business owner is that, I believe that I'm a really good problem solver.
Yeah, I think now that you said that, the way that you said that, that makes a lot of sense. There's usually not a day that when I get to walk into the office where I don't have, 4 or 5 different people bringing their problems to me. And then all I get to do is figure out and make and offer solutions to what their problems are, or just give them another angle to look at it, because they're the professionals. I really trust in my team.
So on that topic specifically, we talked earlier from the investor's perspective of they're investing in a person because they believe in you. It's the same thing as when you build your team. Like, it's not necessarily an investment or money driven, but you're bringing that specific person onto your team because you believe they're going to take your company to the next level. So again, I had a brainchild and it happened to be a smart fastener, but at this point in time, that's kind of the extent of where my expertise goes. And now you have to go find those key personnel to put in those key positions to take your company to the next level. So I think, team building and problem solving and all of those things fall into the same cup, but that's what makes a startup tick.
Right. No, you mentioned a really good point, is trusting in the people that you bring to the table. And I think, as I've got to grow and look back, one of the other things that I wish I would have done differently, I think we've talked through this as well. As soon as you have doubt in your gut, it's time to move forward and let those people move on. What are some of the things that you do to overcome the idea of letting somebody go or moving forward or building a new relationship? How do you get yourself and navigate through that?
I think it's kind of like a bull in a china shop. I want to run to problems as quickly as I can to get them addressed. There's a lot of people in the world that when the day gets heavy, you want to run and hide in the corner, and you really just want to kind of sulk in your problems rather than facing them directly. I was told when I was a financial advisor by a gentleman by the name of Wesley Flores, be the buffalo. And the reason why the buffalo is different than the cows run into the corner when the storm's coming, and the buffalo runs directly into the storm, so the storm's always shorter. And so, if you can apply that terminology to your business every day, like that's the approach that we take at Wade-O-Lution for problem solving is run directly at the problem.
That's one of the guys that I get advice from all the time says the same thing. Bad news doesn't get better with time.
Yeah.
So you might as well just get it over with. There's a lot of things that we're going through. You're going to become a new father, first-time father.
Yes, sir.
Your wife has just built a business, is in the process of building a dental facility.
Yep.
What's the difference between building a brick-and-mortar service company compared to what you're building with your software, hardware solution?
I would say day to day, a lot less people interaction. And that's kind of the reason we're having this podcast, right? Is founders need other founders around them. Dentists have dental friends they went to school with. Right. And so when times get tough or you have a question, they have somebody to call automatically because there's 200 people in their graduating class. I'm not a dentist, but I'm a good business owner. So I can help her from the business aspect, but she still needs that insight from her dental friends that she grew up with. Over here, I'm blessed to have somebody 3 doors down that's fighting the same fight as me every single day and has been doing it for a year longer than I have on this specific topic. And so, to everybody listening, I bounce a lot of ideas off Kyle, and I have from the beginning. So, I'm appreciative of him.
I think one of the things that recently has kind of sprung on me is that a lot of very valuable information comes from places that I never expected. Do you go through that as well?
Yeah, for sure.
I can remember being at a conference the other day, and this kid just loved the idea that Shaquille was involved in my product. I bet you I fielded 3,000 questions with 2,995 of them about Shaquille.
Yep.
And by the end of the day, I was like, wow, I was so grateful to get away from this kid. And then being able to look at some of the things that he's done in his startup recently, I'm like, I should have gave this kid way more time and asked him questions because he's got it figured out. And it's some of the more technical side challenges, but these people are willing to give advice, and they're coming from areas that you never expected. And I feel like people just need to let that guard down when it comes to meeting new people and really just absorb some of the things that they have to offer, because the challenges in building a company, especially in a space that you're trying to recreate or, new technology, you're going to come up with questions that you don't have the answers for, and they're not going to be typical answers because if it was typical, people would have already solved this problem. Right?
Correct. Yep.
So, just always be open. If I could give more advice, just be more open to the people that you don't think bring value, because I promise you one day they will.
There's 2 things that kind of on that topic that everybody, I think, internally is scared of. One is everybody thinks their idea is going to get stolen, right?
Yeah.
And 2, they think every person coming to talk to them is their competition. And I think what I've experienced is the exact opposite. Like the people that are wanting to come up and talk, or that I want to go up and talk to, want to be talked to.
Right.
They have that same inner urge of finding out about what's going on around them that I do. And that's why we are considering ourselves entrepreneurs.
Right.
And so, don't forget who you are trying to surround yourself with, because they're very, very much like-minded people. And the world can be a crazy place, but don't think that everybody's out there to steal your idea, because if they were, it would already been done. Like you said.
If you think that your idea is all you have before starting a company, you probably don't have much. Right. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Ideas are the first part of the problem, but execution is 99% of it. And I think a lot of people that are scared of networking, I want you to look at it a little bit differently. A lot of people go on social media and build an audience. My wife's does hair, yep. And the people that follow her, she's got over, close to 10,000 people that follow her and like her posts. And I say to her all the time, your audience is one of the most engaged audiences I've ever seen. She'll post somebody's hair and there'll be 50 comments.
Yeah, I'm one of them. She's doing my wife's hair, right?
50 comments of people that are liking her stuff. And these are like-minded people. But that's another form of networking without identifying networking.
Right.
And that's why social media has become so important, is because you get to talk to a broader audience faster and get that feedback. Sometimes the feedback that you want is somebody to like that photo, and that's majority of what it is. But for me, that's why we're building these podcasts, is so we can give this out and have somebody watch it and be like, you know what, I can give advice to that guy. And he seems very approachable, and maybe he'll have some value for me. It's not always like trying to get something in life. I feel like the more that I can give, the easier my life gets. And, we're both very faith-based people, but the Bible says that too. You know what I mean? Put your best foot forward and give as much as you can and see where the world takes you. And not in those words, but, that's my 2023 abbreviation of it. And I think now that I've, really been purpose-driven, how can I give back my knowledge, and if it all ended tomorrow, I would feel accomplished just with the stuff that I've got to learn. How's some of the things that you approach when going to look for new information? How do you go about it?
Information in what specific topic?
I'll give you an example from something that you've gone through. Originally, this was going to be the anti-theft device.
Right.
Now, you're measuring torque and tension, so how did you go from like just needing to like understand that the bolt was moving to understanding what it was doing within that motion? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think that comes from, again, who you surround yourself with, right? So going to some of those trade shows and being asked questions that open your mind to, having this conversation we talked about a second ago. You're engaging in conversation. People are challenging what you're doing, makes you think outside that box. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, it was intended to do this, but can it do where we're at now?
Right.
And so, engaging in that conversation or in those conversations is what opens your mind and kind of makes you think outside the box. And so, I'll use Omar Elabed for an example. He's our guy at that mystery manufacturing plant that everybody knows about. When I was introduced to him at PRI, the second trade show we went to last December, I presented him an anti-theft lug nut, and his brain in his industry automatically went to, well, this is metrology based. This is the study of measurement, and we can apply this to this, this, and this. And so, again, having that conversation, keeping that person close to continue having those conversations, and it just kind of allows you to learn, not from a book, but from the people that you surround yourself with. I think is the correct answer to that.
Right. What are some of the things that keep you up at night right now? Like as an entrepreneur, at first when people ask me that question, I was like, I ain't answering that. Then you'll know what I'm weak at. You know what I mean? But now, like really accepting and taking ownership of the things that keep you up at night has brought me like a sense of freedom.
Yeah.
What are some of the things keeping you up at night?
So if you ask my wife, she would say nothing because I fall asleep in about a minute flat. But come 2:30 in the morning, there's some thoughts running through there. And mainly it's, the brain never sleeps when you're in a position like this. And I think my brain is always awake on, what's next? Who do I need to go find next? Who do I need to be introduced to next? Less about what is our product doing today and just more about what is going to take this company to the next level. We've proved and validated, that our technology is viable at this point. But it still feels in life like you're always waiting to meet that next person. And so I think my dreams and my thoughts and what scares me is what happens when you do meet that next person. Do you practice your elevator pitch? Do you practice, what you need to say to that person? Do you stumble over your words? All of those things are kind of on my mind all the time. And funny enough, they played out yesterday. I went to an investor pitch that I thought was going to be an hour long. The gentleman standing next to me, you got 5 minutes. I got to go to a funeral. And he walked out. He walked back in, and I was explaining to the rest of the table. 5 minutes later, he said, I've heard what I needed to hear. They invited me back for 1 o'clock. That was at 10:30, 1 o'clock the next day, or the same day. I'm pitching to him and everybody else in the room, 10 people from 3 people. So, they say if you can't explain it to your grandma, you need to figure it out and re-explain it. I think in this business, you have to know every aspect of not the details, the ones and zeros, but what you're trying to accomplish and be able to put it in a 1 to 2 minute sentence. So I think for me, I'm always perfecting that piece of it because I am the face, you are the face. As we grow, we are less and less of the behind the scenes of making the clock tick. We just need to know what time it is and be able to explain that.
So I never gave you heads up on this at all, but my audience, if you look at the demographic of, the majority of the people that follow my stuff are entrepreneurs, VCs, CEOs. If you were to give, the elevator pitch, right now, what would it be?
Well, it started off as an anti-theft lug nut, has now become a digital fastener. We've partnered with X company after you sign that NDA, right? And our goal is to move and integrate AI and machine learning and change the way condition-based monitoring is done. We're going to be the first company to apply metrology to the condition-based monitoring industry, and this is how we're going to do it. And I'd follow it with, this is what we're doing, this is what we plan to do, and this is kind of the market segment we're after.
No, that's great. I think you touched on a lot of talking points that those original questions are going to ask. Now, if I could help you with any two things today, or my audience could and reach out, what are two things that you could use help with today?
I think the same thing everybody else is looking for is the fundraising opportunity, the people that are open to having the conversations. You and I talked before this podcast started, and I think that our next partner is not necessarily a big venture capitalist firm or a private equity firm. I think it's somebody that has the use for our technology. Small businesses are hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue still. It's funny to think about that, but a small business that has the use for a digital fastener that's going to save somebody's life, that's going to create revenue and keep their machines from having downtime. If there's anybody, that is in your network business wise, that would be my ask is a connection there.
No, I think that's great, Brett. I appreciate you taking the time and being patient today, venturing over in the rain because it is raining in Texas, believe it or not. But
yeah, for sure.
I want to thank you for coming on the show, and I look forward to being a part of your journey. Thank you.
Appreciate you having us, and it's great to be your neighbor.
Wade, if anybody's looking to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
So you got Brett at Wade-O-Lution.com, and it's Wade, WADE-O-Lution, LUTION.com.
Thank you, guys. And if anybody out there that is in my audience that has any interest in this or has some advice or even just wants to connect with Brett, give him a follow and pass this and share this into their networks. All startups understand that it takes a village to make a difference. So we're here to drive engagement and drive information for the great things people are working on. So thank you. Till next time. Look forward.